first half of December 1941. According to some interpretations of chaos theory, one flap of a seagull's wing is enough to alter the course of global weather forever. In December 1941, it is the roar of many wings of Japanese bombers and fighter planes over Hawaii and Southeast Asia that alters the course of the war forever, and the repercussions are felt immediately across the globe. This is War Against Humanity, a subseries of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus Olsson. In the second half of November 1941, Japan deployed bacterial bombs and several biological attacks in China. The Romanians were deporting Jews to the barren camps and ghettos in Transnistria from Bukovina and Bessarabia, while Bosnian Serbs struck out against Croats and Muslims. The Nazis started deporting German Jews to the ghettos in the east, where many were immediately murdered in the slaughters happening in the ghettos in the Baltic states. The first week of December sees more of the same, but the Japanese strikes across the Pacific in the second week of December changes everything in only one day. The most immediate impact for civilians is, of course, that over 100 million people in Hong Kong, the Dutch East Indies, the Philippines, Siam, and Malaya are now living in a war zone, and that across the globe there are very few countries that are not belligerents or occupied. Worldwide, the only countries that will be able to remain neutral throughout the war are now Afghanistan, Bhutan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, North Yemen, Portugal, Spain, Switzerland, Ireland, Sweden, and the microstates Andorra, Liechtenstein, and the Vatican. 96% of the world's population will eventually be actively involved in the war. But for many of the new belligerents in the Americas, the war is still something ominous and distant, shocking and terrifying for sure, but for most not yet actively impacting their lives. In the US, the first signs of how life will change for some Americans are immediate, though. On the day of the attack, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issues proclamations 2525, 2526, and 2527, which directs the U.S. authorities to apprehend, restrain, secure, and remove Japanese, German, and Italian non-citizens. This is a wartime measure that we have seen in other countries already, but in America, the reality of national ethnicity is a bit more complicated than in many other places. Some Americans refer to themselves as Italian American, Irish American, Chinese American, Japanese American, and so on. And even if you don't see yourself that way, racism is endemic, and many others are very likely to see you as an alien in some way based on your looks or ancestry. As a result, the interpretation of these proclamations is not straightforward. Legally, they only apply to people that are not U.S. citizens, but in Hawaii, immediately on the same day as the attack, U.S. military and local police choose to interpret it as anyone that is of Japanese American identity. That's close to 160,000, or 1/3 of the territory's population. Many of them are now rounded up and put in protective custody. If you have already seen our minute-by-minute coverage of the attack on Pearl Harbor, you will perhaps remember how 12-year-old Thompson Isawa of Pearl City experiences it. All the neighbors, the Japanese neighbors, were at my home. It was easy for the military to pick us up. They put us in a truck and hauled us all to the mountains and left us there under guard. They had fixed bayonets, the security guards. Several days after the attack, non-Japanese people were allowed to go home. We were not. The same day in Europe, German Führer Adolf Hitler takes harsher actions against his perceived enemies. On December 7, 1941, he orders the Chief of Staff of the German Army, head of the OKH, Wilhelm Keitel, to issue the Nacht und Nebel, or Night and Fog Decree. It gives the German military the option to bypass any restrictions on the treatment of civilian prisoners. Any individuals in occupied territory that are a suspected threat to the German army shall now be made to disappear into the fog of the night. In practice, it eliminates lengthy legal procedures so that German authorities can now abduct anyone they like. They are interrogated, often tortured, after which special courts, Sondergerichte, convict them to death or imprisonment. This measure is supposed to discourage resistance more than regular imprisonment or the taking of hostages. In the decree, Kyhle elaborates, efficient intimidation can only be achieved either by capital punishment or by measures by which the relatives of the criminal and the population do not know the prisoner's fate. In the occupied East, these practices are long standard. The decree is intended for use in Western Europe, and its application is immediate in France, where prisoners are now made to disappear into the French Nacht- und Nebel camp of Natzweiler-Struthof in Alsace. This is just one of many signs that the Nazis are now releasing themselves from any inhibitions they may have had. The clearest indication of this has been the massive scale of murder in occupied USSR. On December 1st, SS Standartenführer Karl Jäger finishes his report on the actions of Einsatzkommando 3. I can confirm today that the goal of solving the Jewish problem in Lithuania has been achieved by Einsatzkommando 3. There are no more Jews in Lithuania except worker Jews and their families. I also wished to bump off these workers, but this was strongly resisted by the civilian administration and the Wehrmacht and provoked the following ban. These Jews and their families must not be shot. In only 5 months, this single unit has murdered more than 150,000 men, women, and children. And he is annoyed that 35,000 had to be left alive. Well, Jäger is expressing a groundswell of feelings among many mid-level Nazi operatives to just be done with it, kill them all. They treat it as an issue of unpracticality, a nuisance that they have to deal with. For instance, a lot of Germans relocated to Poland in 1939 and 40 under the exchanges between then allies, USSR and Germany, ended up in the parts of Poland the Germans have renamed Vaterland. The mass migration soon creates food shortages. The head of the SS Sicherheitsdienst in Vaterland, Ernst Damzog, who, by the way, administrated this very relocation, chalks it up to Jewish overpopulation. In July, he tells the Gauleiter of Vaterland, Arthur Greiser, there is the danger this winter that the Jews can no longer be fed. It has to be seriously considered whether the most humane solution might not be to finish off those Jews not capable of working by some sort of fast-working preparation. A solution that he has now been preparing together with SS Sturmbannführer Herbert Lange, who has led several of the operations to kill mental patients within the T4 program in Poland by using gas vans. Mobile gas chambers using either bottled carbon monoxide gas or exhaust fumes to kill the victims. They have set up a camp called Chelmno, where on December 8th they start regular experiments with murder by gas. The results of the tens of thousands of murders they will commit in the coming weeks will be meticulously documented and reported to the rest of the SS. And yet, as absurd as it might sound in view of all this death, there is still not yet an all-out official plan to exterminate every single Jew. But the signs that this is coming have been unmistakable. On November 28th comes another one, when in Berlin Hitler meets with the leader of Palestinian Arabs, Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini. Hitler tells him that Germany has resolved step by step to ask one European nation after the other to solve its Jewish problem, and at the proper time direct a similar appeal to non-European nations as well. Germany's objective would then be solely the destruction of the Jewish element residing in the Arab sphere under the protection of British power. The man in charge of finding a final solution to the Jewish question, head of the SS Sicherheitsdienst Reinhard Heydrich, is also preparing a meeting on the topic. Letters go out to the state secretaries of the ministries of the Interior, Propaganda, Justice, the Four-Year Plan, the Ostministerium, and the Foreign Office. The meeting is to take place on December 9th. There, Heydrich will present the current state of his plans. The purpose is to finally coordinate a wide variety of efforts that have arisen organically to fulfill the Führer's will. As I have repeatedly pointed out, the Nazi rule depends on a system of autonomous, independent organization within the party that act on vague directives by Hitler, which they interpret and enact according to their own will, sometimes in competition with each other. The Jewish question has been handled by the SS and the Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler, the Foreign Ministry and the Reichsminister Joachim von Ribbentrop, and within the somewhat unclear and shifting but extremely powerful responsibilities of Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring. After they all got in each other's hair about who was to get the credit and glory for the various plans to exterminate most of the Slavs by starving them to death this past summer, Göring and Himmler appointed Heydrich to coordinate a comprehensive plan for the final solution, and von Ribbentrop mandated his Undersecretary Martin Luther to coordinate with Heydrich. It would seem that Heydrich and Luther have now made their decisions, and on December 5th, Luther notes, "The opportunity of the war must be used to finally put to rest the Jewish question in Europe." But before the meeting can take place, the Red Army launched their counteroffensive on the 5th, and Japan attacks across the Pacific on the 7th. Now, as strange as it might sound, both of these events come as surprises to the Nazi leadership and send them scrambling to decide how to respond. With everyone tied up in this mess, Heydrich postpones his meeting until January 20th, 1942. But Hitler is not relenting on pressing for the implementation of his desires. After declaring war on the US on the 11th, on December 12th, he holds a meeting at the new Reich Chancellery with a wide group of the Nazi leadership, including his Gau and Reichsleiter, the Nazi party officials who actually run the German Reich and occupied territories as regional shadow dictators and governors. While there are no official minutes of the meeting and no protocol, it is unmistakable that whatever words Hitler uses, he makes it clear that the final solution shall be extermination. Reichsminister of Propaganda Josef Goebbels is present and writes in his diary the next day, "Regarding the Jewish question, the Führer has decided to make a clean sweep. He prophesied to the Jews that if they yet again brought about a world war, they would experience their own annihilation. That was not just a phrase. The world war is here, and the annihilation of the Jews must be the necessary consequence." With almost exactly the same words, the governor of the Generalgouvernement in Poland, Hans Frank, relates this meeting to his government on December 16th, referring to the potential outcome of Heydrich's upcoming meeting. He expands. "In any case, a major Jewish migration will begin, but what shall happen to these Jews? Do you think they will be settled in villages across the Ostland, the Baltic states, and Belarusia? We were told in Berlin, why bother with the trouble? We have no use for them in the Ostland or in the Reichskommissariat Ukraine either. Just liquidate them yourselves." And with these casual words that literally mean the death of millions of people, all the dice have been cast. The world war has become a global war. In the US, it immediately brings out the worst impulses in some people. In China, man-made killer diseases continue to reap countless lives. In occupied Soviet Union, the mass killings just continue and continue. And now, Hitler has decided that he shall release a whirlwind of death that will make even these horrors look like an angry breeze. It's hard to imagine that, like any year, this is the holiday season. For many Christians, December 14th, 1941 is the third Advent Sunday. For Jews, it is the first day of Hanukkah. Both religions light candles for these festivities, candles to remind us of hope and compassion. Holidays born to remember how seemingly insurmountable hardships were overcome. And that is perhaps the best thing we can do. Light a candle and think of those who were lost and hope that their sacrifice was not for nothing. Never forget.